Hey, Howard.
In case you need a lawyer, here's my business card. I'm attorney Howard Ankin.
Oh, hey, Howard.
If you or someone you know has been hurt at work, Ankin Law can get the medical bills paid, the lost wages reimbursed,
Oh, hey, Howard.
and the compensation you deserve.
Hey, Howard.
We're one of the largest filers throughout the state of Illinois of workers' compensation claims. We're here to help. Call 312-6-million. Injury law made personal, that's Ankin Law.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine Podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to a new episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Thursday night, August 7th, 2025, as we bring you a new show. The Chicago White Sox had some late inning runs at Seattle, even took the Mariners into extra innings on Thursday, but ended up getting swept in the Emerald City. Now they have a 4-game losing streak as the White Sox are 42-73 as they return home for a 6-game homestand. We'll recap what went down in Seattle as Luis Robert Jr. had himself a good series, why we may need to start watching Colson Montgomery's contact rate a little more. Does Jonathan Cannon have any answers against left-handed batters? And why is Josh Rojas still on this team? Kidding. But Chase Byatt is going on the injured list. Josh Rojas made another bad defensive play. We'll talk about his defensive play this season later in the show. We'll also preview this weekend series against the Cleveland Guardians, who have suddenly thrust themselves back into postseason contention without doing anything at the trade deadline. Jim Margulis is visiting the Winston-Salem Dash tonight, so joining me to record this episode as Sox Machine's beat reporter, it's James Fegan. And hello, James. I want to start with a weird stat, something that caught my attention. Pre-All-Star break, 97 games played. The White Sox hit 76 home runs. That was 28th in Major League Baseball. Post-All-Star break, 18 games played. The White Sox have hit 36 home runs. That leads the league in home runs hit. Colson Montgomery's got 8. Lenyn Sosa's got 4, so does Tauchman. Andrew Benintendi, Luis Roberts, and Miguel Vargas all have 3 home runs. In 2024, the White Sox only hit 133 home runs. That was the worst in Major League Baseball. With the rate that they're currently hitting home runs post-All-Star break, they may surpass last year's total in the next 11 games. James Fegan, has the Chicago White Sox organization finally embraced ball and air offensive philosophy?
I would probably hold off making such a proclamation. Well, in the sense that, like, it's not like it happened over the All-Star break, right? They didn't all change their minds about this. Obviously, the personnel, I think, has a big deal with it. Colson Montgomery has hit 8 of them. Colson Montgomery had not hit any Major League home runs before the All-Star break. So he's the biggest addition to it. You're seeing some guys kind of heat up in terms of, Robert coming out of the doldrum, so to speak. Tauchman, looking a little bit, healthier. Lenyn Sosa, I don't like. Lenyn Sosa exists outside of trends, outside of universal forces. Like, I can't put his breakout in the context of anything. Like, Lenyn is his own context.
I keep tweeting it. The Lenyn Sosa experience is wild.
This is something they've wanted, even the whole, them crushing fastballs, which I think this is obviously the result of. They have the ability to hit these for power more than any other pitch. That's something, at least in terms of bubbling towards the surface, towards I'm going to complain about how the team is doing about this in post-game pressers, so everybody knows this is the issue, which probably is itself is the result of things being said in behind closed doors for a while. That dates back to really the Texas series in June, where Will Venable's this is the thing holding us back. Until we do this, we're going to struggle offensively. It dates back to that. Certainly with Colson, there's individual things he started using the torpedo bat in Tampa. And then, he struggled in Tampa because he was out of torpedo bats because he had put in an order once they started clicking, but didn't necessarily have like weeks of supply, stuff like that. Is that the reason he's whiffing at back foot breaking balls again? Um, yeah, I think they've embraced it. I think there's a lot of like general in talking about the White Sox these last 2 years, a lot more of them talking in the way that other teams talk about in terms of what they need to do offensively. And this is a symptom of it. It just seems like maybe they're a little bit more suited to do that than before. Like, I don't like what Tim Elko was supposed to deliver is very much a ball and air type of offense that he wasn't able to do it when he got called up in like May or whatever. Wasn't the maybe you could see them. I understand like the way he's gone up and down, and who they picked in favor of someone like that could indicate that the team wasn't really sold on power being that important. But I don't think you've been getting the messaging you've been getting like when say the 2022 White Sox didn't hit for power, like, oh, this isn't that big of a deal. It's more about, good contact. I think that sort of messaging has kind of been stripped away for a while. It's more about the lack of personnel to have it. When you have someone like Colson up, when Tachman's healthy, when Luis Roberts right, maybe this is a group that's a bit more suited to produce that sort of power. Certainly Miguel Vargas has been made more viable against fastballs and doing damage against them over the course of the season with a specific swing change. I think you're getting that philosophy espoused a lot more openly, but maybe it's because the players are able to kind of make it look like it's not empty words a bit more than they were a year ago. Like I was having a conversation. I think Fuller would say it on the record, even though we were just chatting. I basically asked him, like, are you one of those new hitting guys that kind of doesn't believe in two-strike approach? And he waffled on it, like not waffled in the sense he didn't have the courage of convictions, but like he pointed out there are exceptions. Like Chase Mydroff needs a two-strike approach. That guy's built around contact. You're not telling Chase Mydroff take 3 A swings in a row. But for someone like Robert, he was more of the mind of like, yeah, it probably is our best value play for him to not shorten up with 2 strikes. He cited that like the research is such that if you ask someone who's just like kind of power oriented like Robert to shorten or slow up his swing, that you really the trade-off it makes him more inaccurate, like with his barrel. Like he's not more precise with making contact. It's really the sacrifices you have on putting a ceiling on what he can do is not worth the supposed contact benefit because he's not comfortable enough doing it. So I think having someone at the top of hitting operations who's espousing like, hey, for some of our power guys, just let it rip 3 times. Yeah, that's obviously a bit different. But I think that's more, I think we're seeing the effects of that in the sense of this past week is testament to this team being bit more ball in air, bit more like, hey, the guys who hit for power, they just got to let it rip. That's what they're here to do. We're seeing that over these past couple of weeks with this output in a way that we weren't seeing even last year, even if these people were in place who believe that. So I think the answer is yes with qualifications to your question of whether the White Sox are embracing it. I just don't think it necessarily happened at the All-Star break or even, this season. It's just that seeing the results of that can tend to be a process, that we're only now seeing the fruits of, where we kind of think like, man, did they? And sure enough, they did have a team meeting at the All-Star break, which muddles the answer. But I don't think it was like looking at the standings for the first time at the break and gets me like, I just don't think this hitting for average thing is going to work, boys. Time to flip it. So yes, they are hitting ball in the air. Yes, we're finally seeing the results for the first time. No, I don't think like something happened while watching the home run derby where it's like, the end.
What
of
a
the
great
usual,
idea.
The end of the usual suspects where someone's dropping like a coffee mug and like realizing it for the first time. Oh my God. Like, I don't think that happened, but yes, a shift has the winds have clearly been blowing a different direction for a while now.
It is wild, like post All-Star break. I mean, you're going from a team that's close to the bottom again in Major League Baseball, not even averaging a home run a game, to they're averaging 2 home runs a game, even on Thursday.
It's the only way they can score.
Yeah, Michael A. Taylor and Brooks Baldwin, of all players. Well, they did get a wild pitch offense moment. But with Seattle, they made it tough. Like the Mariners pitchers, especially their starting pitchers, have terrific stuff. Two seamers, wicked sliders, a lot of break. It's hard to put together two or three hits against Seattle pitching in an inning. That's where, now talking about Luis Robert, that was critical for the White Sox because Robert is running. He's got 9 stolen bases so far post All-Star break. He's playing excellent baseball for the White Sox. And in one of your more recent columns on SoxMachine.com, James, you listed in this final stretch of games in 2025 some metrics and some rates that you're going to be paying attention to. And one of them for Luis Robert was his ability to hit fastballs against right-handed pitching. And Robert has been hot as of late. He's got a 9-game hitting streak. He's got a 23-game on base streak. And against Seattle, he went 5 for 12 with a home run, with 2 walks and 3 strikeouts. He did steal 2 bases. Robert became the 4th White Sox player ever to reach 100 home runs and 100 stolen bases in a career with the organization. James, from what you saw against the Mariners, again, really great starting pitching against Luis Robert. How do you think Robert fared against the fastballs against these righties?
He didn't look like super, like obviously he homered on one, though it was like very much in the way he does, where it wasn't pulled. It was kind of like using his bat seat for makeup speed. Like, he kind of recognizes the fastball a little. He's trying to see the ball deep, but he recognizes fastball. He's got enough like quickness where he's able to kind of catch up and impact it, but it's a low line drive to right field. It just gets out and he's strong enough to do that. It's not as convincing as like he's going to be able to hit, he can hit home runs to right field, but it's obviously not going to be the way when he's pulling the ball and how authoritative he looks against left-handers. It was more competitive than dangerous, I would say. Like he was able to have good, tough at-bats against Gilbert on Thursday and really give him trouble. Obviously reached base 4 times, but you didn't think he was about to just launch one at any point. Like his hits were more like kind of fighting stuff off to right center. But I think like really, if you look at Robert year to year, things didn't. 2023 is the only real time where he like dominated right-handed pitching. Usually more his formula is like if he can be kind of competitive, if he can be a league average guy against right-handed pitching and just demolishes lefties with all the other things he does, and especially because like this now maybe a little bit lower powered guy that he is against right-handed pitching, that guy getting on first and then he's ultimately like putting himself in scoring position with his legs right away. That can really work. Like someone who just is awesome against lefties and is league average against righties and provides you good center field defense. It steals lots of bases. That's one that's going to shake out to like a 115 or so, like WRC plus guy overall, while providing a lot of secondary value. That's a pretty good player. Maybe it's not the MVP level guy that he looks like when he's dominating right-handed pitching. And maybe getting away from kind of the really tough righties that he faced with Wu and Gilbert makes him look a little bit better than that. But I thought he was consistently kind of helpful offensively as opposed to kind of a black hole against righties. And I talk about facing, fastballs against righties a bit more because like I don't think he's ever going to be able to really good against sliders, like both with the way he's performed against it and the way he talks about it. What I hope more for him is that he can keep it from kind of taking him away from being aggressive against fastballs where he's late on them, where he's so slider conscious that he kind of can't keep up, can't make that readjustment. And I felt like he was able to fight off a lot of fastballs against right-handers in a way that was encouraging, even if I don't think he's ever going to hit a ton of pulled home runs against right-handed velocity. That's just not really his approach is. I think he'd whiff a ton if he was like geared up to do that with how much he'd get like slidered to death. But if he's able to still maintain his chase, still take his walks that he's been doing, he's over 10% for the year. He really seen big gains in his chase rate still. I think that's still useful if we kind of associate it with this last 2 years where he's chasing less than ever, but the breakout is not happening. If anything, is getting worse. I still think that's a useful club in his bag to be able to just get on base and steal lots of bases against right-handed. I've set my goals like if we get a 100 WRC plus against right-handed pitching version of Robert, I think that guy's really serviceable, really good, really useful. And I think you saw him look like that against Seattle. Even if he wasn't killing the ball, he was consistently giving you competitive at bats. And we've all seen Robert slip into stages where the at bats don't look competitive, and this was a lot different than that. So I come away encouraged with how he looked against a tough rotation that generally was tough on the entire lineup.
Yeah, and he made a terrific diving catch in center field. Like, to your point, before Thursday's game, Fangraphs in 14 games post All-Star break for Luis Robert already worth 0.9 WAR. That exceeds what he was pre All-Star break. And Jim wrote about this as far as his thoughts with the White Sox not trading Luis Robert, that if Robert needed a change of scenery, is that change of scenery already with the White Sox, with so much turnover in the front office and in the coaching staff? Is it finally getting through to Robert? If Robert is going to be a one WAR, if he's going to earn one WAR every 15 games he's going to play, James, he's totally worth $20 million. I mean, it's that simple. So as long as Robert continues to play at this rate, and to your point, like those 5 hits against Seattle, a lot of them he's fighting off two seamers, these sinkers that are in the inside part of the plate, but they're fighting grass. He's getting singles. He's stealing second base. He's getting himself into scoring position. It's just tough for the rest of the hitters in the White Sox lineup, other than hitting home runs as of late, to generate more runs to help win a game in Seattle. But Robert has been playing great, especially in the post All-Star break.
Learning a new language opens the door to new friends, new cultures, and maybe even a whole new life. So why not start the journey today? There's over a dozen languages available to learn at your own pace, so you can achieve your goals with material tailored to your individual proficiency level, interests, and time availability. I'm finally learning French after taking classes in high school and thrilled to finish what I'd started years ago. And my favorite part about Babbel is that it's dialogue-based. It helps me to actually practice conversations, and the speech recognition ensures I'm saying words correct them all. So get talking with Babbel. I want you to learn another language, so I'm teaming up with Babbel to gift you 55% off subscriptions, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/bluewire. Get up to 55% off at babbel.com/bluewire, spelled BABBEL.com/bluewire. babbel.com/bluewire. Rules and restrictions may apply.
You just realized that you needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people that you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, with Indeed sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/BWN. Just go to Indeed.com/BWN right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/BWN. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Another metric that you are following on Sox Machine, James, is Colson Montgomery's contact rate. And Seattle maybe exposed Montgomery a little bit in this series. Now, Colson Montgomery's got a great highlight where he absolutely crushed a home run against the Mariners. That's the only highlight. Colson Montgomery went 1-for-11 against Seattle with 6 strikeouts. And James, just appeared that Seattle's pitching staff and their game plan was, we are going to pick on Colson Montgomery with sliders down and in the zone. And it's got to be so enticing for Montgomery, James, because I could see when he's swinging at these pitches that he can get his barrel through that part of the zone. Like, it seems like it's going to be in the path of his barrel, but it's just missing the bat, or it's just breaking at the last second and he's whiffing. So looking at Colson Montgomery's contact rate, something you're going to be paying attention to, is that a pitch that White Sox fans are going to have to follow along to see if Montgomery can make some adjustments on?
Because it's a baseball podcast, I won't get checked on it, but I feel like there's like some apocryphal story, or like maybe it was Michael Jordan or someone else talking about guarding Clyde Drexler, where it's like let him like leave him open for like the first shot, so then he'll just start taking perimeter jumpers for the rest of the night. Whereas if he misses the first one, he'll start attacking the basket. They threw Colson like this massive like cookie on like of a low like inside slider on the first game of the series, and he hits it to like Canada. And so then the next two nights are like throwing good back foot sliders to him. And it's like, ooh, and his eyes are lighting up every time. Like, I remember hitting a ball 700 feet. I want to feel that way again. And kind of chasing over good ones from George Kirby, and then Logan Gilbert's throw him some splitters as well. And yeah, like that's certainly the pitch that when he started chasing in AAA Charlotte at the beginning of the year, like that's where like all his chases were. And I remember even trying to talk myself into in the chat, being like, well, never seen him do this like this before, so hopefully this is like an aberration. And then it like continued for another couple weeks, and now it's kind of the book of how to attack him. Yeah, like I think away from him, he's very deadly, and certainly he's shown some ability to kind of handle inner half velocity. That giving him something that is kind of on a similar plane that's going to dump below the zone seems a little at this point the less risky path that teams are going with, as opposed to elevated velocity, which I think is kind of more the book on every left-handed power hitter, which I think would be the last resort once Colson is able to close this up a little bit more.
Yeah.
But he's shown that he will chase it. He ran into another spate of chasing it. I would like to see him back with the torpedo bat. Does it make him a little bit more compact and kind of closing off that path? Because that was something more than just like the bat itself, in terms of like, all right, every pitch that you hit on the label now will now be a bit harder. It was the hope that this will make him a little bit more compact and just like clearing the barrel through the zone. And so, yeah, he faced good pitching, and he's new, and he was on a heater, and he's going to run into probably spates of chasing a little bit. But I would also like to see like if he gets back to kind of what was working with the bat that was working for him. Do we see him snap out of this? But on a big heater, facing really good pitching, kind of an environment for chasing, especially from a rookie. I don't want to be too discouraged about it, but yeah. At this point, Colson's proven that like the quality of contact will not be what we have to worry about. So the rate of contact is going to be what's watching for him. And that's both to say like, oh, we're worried about it now. It needs to be above 70 long-term for us to feel really secure. But also it's just, he's clearly so good and has so much power that I think rate of contact is just going to be the thing that's between him and like 70 probably makes us really stable. That he can get to his power really consistently year to year. Maybe the difference between 70 and 75 is like the difference between like a solid power hitter and like multi-year all-star. Maybe like if Colson has an 80% contact year at some point because he's really shored up his chase, because I think that's really the biggest issue for him right now, is that he's become kind of a 30% chase guy, which is what Luis Roberts gone down to. If he's ever gets like sub 20 chase or 80% contact, maybe that's holy crap, 6-win season type of Colson. And so I bring up his contact rate as just both like, yeah, it's the issue right now, but it's also like he's so good with like contact quality, pulling, like elevating the ball, like all the sort of things that we worry about with like other lesser hitters as far as getting to her power. It's kind of like contact rate and chase rate's the only thing to watch with him, because like we know what it looks like when he's making contact. We know what it looks like when he's swinging at pitches in the zone. Doesn't seem like we'll have to worry about that anytime soon. So this is kind of the one metric to watch for him, because he's Gucci otherwise.
Yeah, I noticed Seattle, especially later in the series, the games, the innings kept piling up. It just seemed like they were picking on Colson Montgomery with that slider down in the zone.
They also intentionally walked him down the stretch, so
they did.
Picking is not it's not mutually exclusive with respect, apparently.
Right. A side conversation with Colson Montgomery, and this is more of a Major League Baseball news, but it did surprise me. But I guess the Boston Red Sox were dead set when we were in Dallas during the winter meetings. They signed their Uber prospect, Roman Anthony, to an 8-year, $130 million contract extension. And there are escalators in that contract where Roman Anthony can make even more money. And Roman Anthony's only played like 47 games with the Red Sox. He only has 2 home runs. It's a lot of doubles. Roman Anthony's already got 15 doubles this year. He's batting 276. He's got an amazing on base percentage. He's on base at a 392 clip. His slugging is 417. So you add it all up, it's an 809 OPS in his first 47 games of the season. But the Red Sox have seen enough. They've signed him to a contract extension. And I guess this is me getting ahead of what could possibly be a fan question, or maybe a question the Sox Machine comments, James. Is this something that the White Sox have to consider if Colson Montgomery gets back on a heater and all of a sudden he's double-digit home runs in his rookie year with the White Sox, or maybe he even reaches 20 home runs before the end of the season? Do the White Sox have to think about a contract extension for Montgomery?
Yes, they have to think about it. Do they have to do it? I don't know. One, what's the guarantee going to be in the area of? Because 130 million guaranteed to Roman Anthony. That's
Franchise setting?
$55 million more than they've ever committed to anyone. So my blanket answer to these questions for, since I guess 2023 is that the White Sox have not operated like they had sort of the money to really pursue extensions with anybody. Nothing McThayer Crochet got very far. Garrett wound up signing for what, 160? Is that right? Or
something like that, yeah. I'll look it up, but I think you're right.
Not basically, if they were in the territory to hand out the Roman Anthony contract, certainly the Garrett Crochet talks didn't indicate that they were in that territory. I imagine Colson be several notches below Garrett, and a couple notches below Roman Anthony, not being a number one global prospect, and he is with a group that has signed extensions before hitting free agency. I think Brandon Lau is the most notable Bledsoe client that I'm thinking of who signed an extension. So it's not like it wouldn't ever happen, but it's also not like a small time agency either that would take like a hometown discount sort of deal either. He's obviously got riskiness to his profile that I think you have to account for, and I wouldn't blame the team for having certainly you wouldn't run the Roman Anthony deal on a copier and hand it to Colson. I don't think necessarily his performance has merited that. In general, they are, until proven otherwise, operating like a small market team. Those teams, to retain, to even just have superstars on the payroll at all, they got to get them young. They got to get them at some point where their cost is lowered. They are not going to get these guys in free agency. If their closest model is the Brewers, based on market size, based on hiring away people from the Brewers, based on signing former Brewers at every opportunity, Brewers signed Jackson Chario to a huge pre-debut extension. I don't think they're in a different territory in terms of if they want superstars retained, they have to kind of do this extension route. We haven't seen them do it in a while. We haven't seen them act like they have any money for these sort of guarantees in a while. I think at some point, maybe it's not the Han level where they were like new ideas that they were kind of springing on players, but I think at some point this team has to get back into the business of pre-arb extensions that have just become commonplace across the league and become a necessity for lower market teams or lower financial capability teams as a way of locking up premium talent. Is Colson that future superstar? I think it's up for question still. Contact rate is something that still has to be monitored. And I can understand that putting a little bit of a cap on how far they're willing to go for that. But yeah, I think in general, is this guy worthy of pre-arb extension? Is not a waste of time for White Sox fans to ask about any new guy who comes up in the next few years who starts dominating. Like, what's his long-term place here? How could they make him affordable long-term? Because I don't think letting guys go 6 years and then trying to retain them in free agency is how the White Sox will thrive at retaining players long term. So yeah, I think it's definitely something worthy of debate, even if I don't think it's a slam dunk, got to do it sort of situation with the way Montgomery's particular prospect path has continued. Probably feel like we haven't reached the stabilization point yet of knowing what he is, and that obviously makes it more difficult. But maybe it's an opportunity to find value before he becomes like a 40 homer monster. If you're really all in on what he could be.
Yeah, I mean, if you think he's going to be Corey Seager, I mean, Corey Seager signed for $250 million.
Right. Maybe
Texas
you're
Rangers.
still worried that he's Jed Jerko, and then you don't want to rush him.
Yeah, I think it's a bit soon. Like, I could understand on the other side of town, the Cubs podcast talking about a contract extension with Pete Crow Armstrong. I can understand maybe a little pressing. I don't know if it's worthwhile for PCA to do that. It's only been a handful of games for Colson Montgomery, but I thought it was a bit eye-opening that Roman Anthony signed this contract extension. Then again, when you're so young and you're a rookie, and if a team is going to give you $130 million guaranteed, James, if I was 21, 22, I'd take that in a heartbeat.
Well, I think it's Alex Spire of, I want to say Boston Globe, who reported that this was like the fourth attempt to sign Ray Anthony to a contract, by the team.
Okay.
Like they made several entreaties over the course of the year. It used to be that you could set your watch to these things all happening in spring, and it's generally where like the big pushes happen. Now it spills over, maybe because you tried in spring and it started a 6-month negotiation process. Now they kind of happen all over the year, but I would think generally, yes, now currently feels soon. It certainly seems like a topic that would be kicked around in the off season, or at least get an idea of what type of territory he's looking for, whether it's in the off season or the spring when, those things used to be commonplace. It's food for thought for sure.
Right, because with the point of the Montgomery contract would be benefit for him. He gets a little higher salary other than league minimum. He doesn't have to worry about arbitration. For the White Sox, you're trying to make him more cost control in what would be a projected that he could possibly make in his first 2 years of free agency. That's what Boston's doing with Roman Anthony.
Arbitration values are generally like, a dispatch from like 1995, and Colson being like, getting home runs and RBIs are the things that are going to like be costly in arbitration. Whereas like, you wouldn't expect like Chase Mydroff's like OBP to make his arbitration figure like explode.
They don't even take consideration WAR.
Right. Like the second baseman who's like secretly really valuable for like getting on base all the time is probably not going to have the arb figure that the big guy who hits home runs and RBIs is going to, which is why like first basemen are getting like non-tendered all the time, because just like their value structure is just not in line with how teams actually view them. So another reason why Colson be something to consider, but another reason why maybe someone else is just super cheap and makes sense to lock them up who doesn't fit. But one of the catchers who generally don't get super well valued or in arbitration, that could be a consideration, which would be awkward because then like you can't extend the catchers on the exact same day, so you'll have like the illusion of having picked one for at least like a hot second, even if they want to lock up both. So that would be funny too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Jed Hoyer is already having a tough time. He traded for an injured pitcher, but the Red Sox have at least set the floor of what a Pete Crow Armstrong contract extension would look like. So good luck, Cubs, with conversations with PCA. But yeah, with Boston signing Roman Anthony, I had thought maybe the White Sox could possibly approach Colson Montgomery if Major League Baseball is getting back onto that track. And who knows what's going to happen after the CBA or leading up to a new CBA.
Learning a new language opens the door to new friends, new cultures, and maybe even a whole new life. So why not start the journey today? There's over a dozen languages available to learn at your own pace, so you can achieve your goals with material tailored to your individual proficiency level, interests, and time availability. I'm finally learning French after taking classes in high school and thrilled to finish what I'd started years ago. And my favorite part about Babbel is that it's dialogue-based. It helps me to actually practice conversations, and the speech recognition ensures I'm saying words correct them all. So get talking with Babbel. I want you to learn another language, so I'm teaming up with Babbel to gift you 55% off subscriptions, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/bluewire. Get up to 55% off at babbel.com/bluewire, spelled BABBEL.com/bluewire. Babbel.com/bluewire. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Now, there are a couple of pressing issues from the Seattle series I quickly want to chat with you about, James. One is Jonathan Cannon. Now, Jonathan Cannon has had good starts for the White Sox, but it's becoming very apparent, almost clockwork. He's having a terrible time against left-handed batters. This year against Jonathan Cannon, left-handed batters are batting .295 with a .370 on base percentage, and they are slugging .545. Folks, that's all-star quality. That's a .915 OPS for left-handed batters against Jonathan Cannon. And he's seen his ERA blow up now. It's up to 5.34 in the season. His FIP is 5.25. James, what do the White Sox do here with Jonathan Cannon? Has Cannon himself even talked about his struggles against left-handed batters and the adjustments that he's trying to make? Because this is not sustainable. This is where he will quickly have to pivot from starting pitcher to reliever, that you bring him out against a string of right-handed batters.
I mean, it's kind of been his issue that they've known about. Since, like, I think Brian Bannister is bringing up like Cannon's vulnerability to left-handed slug. Early last year, even while being super optimistic about him. I would say like it generally rests in not having a fastball that plays super well to them. Whereas I think his sinker on good nights, he'll just be throwing it in the middle of the zone to righties and getting rollovers. He doesn't have that kind of like easy button to kind of turn to with left-handers. He needs to kind of be, his changeup needs to be being, really sharp and well commanded. Last year, it seemed a bit more like vested in, all right, he's just got to work that four-seamer up in and establish that quadrant, and then he can let his changeup do the rest. This year, it seems like it's a bit more using the cutter to work up and end. It also seems like his velo has been down a little bit since the back stuff. You've seen a lot more like him sitting 92, 93 the whole game. Whereas in previous instances, like it wasn't like a good four-seamer in terms of action, but he could ride it up to like 95, 97. And when he at least locates it well, that feels pretty legit for standing lefties up and getting him off his changeup. It seems like he hasn't found a real comfort or reliable zone versus either commanding that four-seamer up and into lefties to make them respect it, or getting that quadrant via his cutter. Neither has been quite as reliable. I don't know what new thing he would kind of develop mid-season. And obviously I think, kind of the back injury, threw kind of a loop for introducing new things into his arsenal, or introducing new plans of attack. But his best pitch, I feel, is his sinker in terms of, or at least his most valuable pitch. I think he believes his changeup is his best pitch, and I think it's an out pitch, but he just doesn't have anything as reliable to set it up against lefties. And they've talked about lefty slug being an issue for him and being something they would have to figure out a solution for a while. But I haven't seen something that's really emerged to take over this year. And with the way he's been kind of suffering for recent, I don't know exactly what the path out of it is. It seems like something I'll have to try to talk to Ethan Gatz about this weekend, but it's been kind of something that they've only found ways of staving it off, not like a permanent fix for a while. And now we're kind of seeing a spike of what was already the known issue. He could face, usually Cleveland's not the lineup that snaps him out of it, because they tend to be very lefty heavy, but right. He could face a righty heavy lineup and look better. I look at the Tigers. That's usually not Riley Green and Gary Carpenter are not usually good friends of his. Nope. But I think he's still a pretty good, pitcher against right-handed pitching, but right now just doesn't have the feel for commanding. whatever he needs to do to get lefties to kind of back off his changeup and stop leaning out. Also, he's hung some sweepers here and there that have given him trouble against righties as well and made him not as overwhelming as he should be. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like his stuff has been a little down since the back injury, even though he stabilized a bit, had some good outings after he came back from it. It doesn't seem like he has quite the same octane as far as like keeping lefties off of him with his four seamer when it's sitting more 93, 94.
I didn't know that he was dropping in velocity, so that's good stuff, James. Is Cannon right now at risk of being demoted? The White Sox don't have the starting pitching depth right now. Like Martin Perez is not ready to join the rotation, right?
Yeah, like he's supposed to be back soon-ish, but Shane Smith, like throwing 5 innings is pretty much the longest they're going to let him go down the stretch. Sean Burke is someone who, they could shorten their outings of a little bit.
He's been good.
He's been good, but like in terms of like simply, what's the word? Precautionary. Like he did not throw that many innings last season. He really didn't get back until like the halfway point last year. So he's not operating off of like 100-inning season. He's pretty much in a similar boat as Shane Smith as far as how many innings he threw last year. Davis Martin obviously has been through full seasons before, but he had a shorter year last year because he wasn't really pitching until midseason due to TJ. They have too many guys that I can see them doing short starts with. That the idea of, I like obviously if Cannon's just getting lit up and not getting out of the second inning time after time, that will call for mediation. But I don't see them rushing into that for someone that they kind of think can be this, good back end starter long term, and two, they kind of have a need for someone who can be run out there and they can count on for a full slate of pitches every time out. And Cannon and is one, and Cannon and Savali are really kind of the two guys who are stabilized for that. Ideally, you get Perez back to that as well, but it's not quite there yet. And so, yeah, I think you can't give up 6 runs every night and keep your rotation slot. But I don't think that's something that, like, man, it could happen any week that they're going to pull him. I think they give him a decent chance to get right, given what he means to them, both on how they view him long term and the current need for innings.
And then Josh Rojas. So on Thursday, in extra innings, a bunt lay down as the Mariners are trying to move.
I thought that defense argument was tough. Like I was playing on easy mode before you pulled this one out.
The trying to move the tying run to third base, and Josh Rojas airmailed his throw over to first base. Poor Lenin Sosa would have to get up on a ladder, try to make a catch on that throw. And that's how Seattle ended up tying the game in extra innings, and they would later win the game in extras 4-3 last year. And when the White Sox signed Josh Rojas, I thought this was a positive attribute. And a reason why the White Sox signed Josh Rojas was when you're looking at defensive runs saved at third base, Rojas was worth +7 defensive runs saved for the Seattle Mariners last year. With the White Sox this year at third base, Josh Rojas is worth -7 defensive runs saved. Even if you look at the fielding run value on Baseball Savant, he's at -4 fielding run value at third base. And we talked about in past episodes, James, that Rojas's playing time is going to shrink. It's time for the kids to play. It's not time for him to play every single game as the veteran. But now you got Chase Mydroth on the injured list, which means that Lenin Sosa is going to get more playing time at first or second base. And Vargas is on the injured list. So that means Curtis Mead is going to be thrown into action. I guess I'm just befuddled why Rojas is so bad at defense. Like, I can understand offensively him continuing to struggle. He's never been that great of an offensive player. But this is the reason why the White Sox signed him, James. And if he's this bad on defense, I'm with other White Sox fans who have their arms up in the air like, why is this guy playing? Like, why can't you play Brooks Baldwin every game at third base? Like, why am I watching Josh Rojas?
I don't know. They're generally like mistakes. Like he misses a ball, or like it's not like you're seeing the limitations of his range. I feel the they're generally kind of weird, like inexplicable plays. Um, I can theorize that he kind of like he's getting ready for the season and then he breaks his toe and then he's rehabbing in Arizona and he just hasn't looked right or on time really since. And that's more of like to tamp down the, I don't know, to sample like the general response or attitude toward him in the comments of screw this guy. I feel like, you see like he's a smart player. Like you see the back picks he's done with like Edgar Caro, like that's a lot of him initiating it. He's super vocal on infield drills. Like he has a lot of ideas about plays they can run defensively and talks about it with a level of like articulation that I don't think he talks about playing infield defense the way I think like guys talk about like pitching who are pitchers. Like
I think Rojas is going to be a future coach in the majors.
Yeah, like I get why they signed him. Like you talk to him and you get how he fits into the concept they wanted to do. And it seems like the injury kind of threw off his timing, his prep for the season, the way that like he just for some reason hasn't recovered. But none of that is to say he's actually been good when he hasn't. Like he's defended poorly. He's made too many mistakes. He will tell you he has hit really poorly. He's just not been able to get on time for the fastball, even though I think it's been like the number one thing he's been working on for probably even longer than the team. It just has not clicked for him. There's nothing, no argument I can give to say like actually he hasn't been playing poorly enough to be cut, because he has been. Like that's just the fact.
But with Vargas and
like,
Maidroth in the IL, you need Rojas on the bench.
Right. It's like you literally called up Jacob Amaya back, or like Vinny Capra homered for AAA Thursday night. Like you have seen the level of infielder they would go to after Rojas for this role. At that said, like if Maidroth and Vargas are healthy, is there an argument for like DFAing him and keeping Baldwin? Sure. Would I rather see at this point Brooks Baldwin see how much he can play third base, as we did a little bit during this trip? Yeah. I think pretty much anyone who's either like young and has some upside, has an argument for playing over Rojas because he hasn't given you present value, nor does he pretend to be part of the future pit of the team. In the past I've rushed against like the idea of like, say, calling up Brian Ramos to take Rojas. If that's a role that's going to be like playing once a week, then yeah, I'm not that jazzed about it. If it's right now where maybe there's a little bit of opening and Ramos has been playing a bit better, and with Maidroth and Vargas hurt, especially if they're going to be out for like most of August, you can see a bit more like Ramos getting like some runway. But if they gave that to Brooks Baldwin instead, that's both better than kind of like pretending that we're with someone with Josh Ramos or Josh Rojas where we're not, where he hasn't been struggling for months. And at this point, I don't think you can prioritize sending someone interesting down to AAA for Rojas to play regularly. I do think generally the idea of like, hey, he's just kind of holding these spots and he's playing, a couple once or twice a week as a backup. Or he's someone who comes in as a defensive substitution because we've done something where we've pitch hit one of the catchers for the other, and now we have to make up for the back. Those are all. I'm fine with him filling that roster spot rather than like having an actual prospect do it. But as far as like getting regular at bats, both on the way he's played in this part of the season, yeah, use someone else if you have him available to. I'm just not in a rush to say like, this has been so objectionable, I'm personally offended by the mistakes he's made, that I'm going to put Brian Ramos in his spot out of spite, even if I don't have a plan to play Ramos. So like, if we get to the point where Maidroth comes back and Vargas comes back, like, yeah, I see that could be the end of Rojas very easily. If we get to the point where it's like him or Jacob Amaya and they're both like not playing very often, they'd probably keep Ramos, and I wouldn't really like be super mad about it. I don't know if that was a coherent like argument, but I don't really have an argument. Like he's clearly been bad. He clearly could be cut and it would be justified. I think he probably won't be until they're a little bit healthier.
Yeah, I think you're right. Because in this infield, I think most White Sox fans, James, would want to see Brooks Baldwin at third, Montgomery at short, Lenine Sosa at second, and Curtis Mead at first. And if you got to move guys around, if you move Brooks Baldwin out to right field to fill in for Mike Talkman defensively, and Rojas is your defensive specialist at third base, I guess that's fine. But as I pointed out, he's just hasn't been good on defense. He's even a liability. So we're running out of ways or thoughts on why Josh Rojas should get playing time, other than the fact that right now Miguel Vargas and Chase Maidroth are on the injured list. And until they return, the White Sox need healthy bodies on the bench. And I forgot Jacob Amaya was still in the organization. And Jacob Amaya pinched ran in Thursday's loss against Seattle. So it's Rojas and Amaya on the bench.
It was ultimately a game they won, I believe, but there was a moment, like the 1-0 game, because Maidroth had been sitting on the IL hurt, or on the active roster, but not on the IL hurt, really not available. And Vargas gets hurt pregame. And they had a situation where like Rojas came up like late with like runners in scoring position, and they functionally couldn't pinch hit for him because there were no other like healthy infielders on the roster if they subbed him out. Those are situations I don't think they should be getting into with Rojas anymore. Obviously, they made a roster move right afterwards to put Vargas on the shelf, and then they put Maidroth on as well. I think situations where you kind of have to hit those dudes, that's where I think you start questioning, like, all right, what do we need to do to shuffle around so this doesn't happen again?
Right.
I think they're generally in a decent spot with that. Right now with Amaya and Rojas, you kind of can't really pinch hit for any of your 4 regular infielders, unless you absolutely have to. And so that's not great. I think I'm another week or 2 away from saying, like, you got to give Ryan Ramos one of these people's their jobs, especially if Maidroth is going to be back in a week. Then you don't need to rush into this situation of Josh Rojas must be, or Jacob Amaya must be out of here. But in general, I think we're a little bit past that point of like, hey, someone got hurt, they're going to start for 2 weeks. Situation with either of those dudes. But I don't think that's quite the spot they're in just yet.
Learning a new language opens the door to new friends, new cultures, and maybe even a whole new life. So why not start the journey today? There's over a dozen languages available to learn at your own pace, so you can achieve your goals with material tailored to your individual proficiency level, interests, and time availability. I'm finally learning French after taking classes in high school and thrilled to finish what I'd started years ago. And my favorite part about Babbel is that it's dialogue-based. It helps me to actually practice conversations, and the speech recognition ensures I'm saying words correct them all. So get talking with Babbel. I want you to learn another language, so I'm teaming up with Babbel to gift you 55% off subscriptions, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/bluewire. Get up to 55% off at babbel.com/bluewire, spelled BABBEL.com/bluewire. babbel.com/bluewire. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Well, the White Sox come back home. They have a 6-game homestand, first against the Cleveland Guardians. The Guardians playing great baseball post All-Star break like the White Sox. The Guardians are now 59-55. They're 4 games above 500. They're second place in the American League Central. They're 6 games back of Detroit, but they're just a game and a half back of the wild card. Like I mentioned in the intro for this show, the Guardians have thrusted themselves back into the postseason conversation. They've won their last 3 games. They're 7-3 in their last 10. And when it comes to the season series, the Guardians are once again dominating the White Sox. Cleveland is 6-1 against the White Sox this year, outscoring the White Sox 30-17. Now, all those games were before the All-Star break, so this is a much different White Sox offense that the Guardians have faced this season. But also post All-Star break, the Guardians are starting to hit. They got a team OPS of 754. That's 9th in Major League Baseball. Staff ERA, starters and relievers, they're 4th in Major League Baseball with a 3.39 ERA. And the Guardians are 13-6 Post All-Star break, the White Sox are 10-8. Your pitching probables for this series. Friday night, it's Chicago Bulls night at the stadium. Tanner Bybee, the right-handed pitcher for the Guardians, will make the start against Aaron Savali, so a revenge game for Savali. On Saturday night, 6:10 p.m. Central Time start, this is Bill Veeck night. Joey Cantillo, the left-hander, will take the ball for Cleveland against Sean Burke. And then on Sunday, it's Ozzie Guillen bobblehead day. First pitch is at 1:10 p.m. Central Time. It's Slade Sassoni for the Guardians against the Dart, Davis Martin. And I mentioned how well Cleveland's been playing post All-Star break, James. Detroit is on the other side of that coin. The Tigers are 7-12 post All-Star break. So the Guardians, in just 19 games, have already made up half the distance on Detroit. And they made up 6 games, another 6 games back of the Tigers. Are the Guardians going to catch Detroit, James? Can Cleveland make this a fun, exciting race in the American League Central before the season's end?
I would lean no. I think having 2 of your most important pitchers maybe never pitching again is
Emmanuel
going
Class A you're talking about? Yeah.
Class A and Ortiz is going to hamper them in ways that are probably easier to cover up short term than long term, where it's just like a depth and workload and like riding all the setup guys that you've now pushed to cover the Class A innings into the ground. Less rotation options. Now, when I was doing the piece about the Sox hitting fastballs and trying to like, basically quantify how absurd it was that it went from like worst in the league to best in the league, something I discovered is that the Guardians have basically made an even more extreme transition. I think like the Sox were actually like 28th in the league in fastball performance and had gone to like 3rd since the break, and the Guardians have gone from like 30th to 2nd. I don't know how much they've held that since, but talking about the White Sox issues, I think like a lot of their starters kind of issues with lefty slug. Cannon's just kind of the most extreme case, but in terms of like Martin, Burke, those are all dudes who have had like openers to deal with like tough lefties at the top of the order. Manzardo's hit really well since the break. Jose Ramirez, this little third baseman they've got, he's been pretty scrappy since the break, and Schneemann has been really good since the break. So they're kind of getting their lefties jumping on heaters for power since the All-Star break in a way that doesn't necessarily profile great with, righties with good sliders like Sean Burke and Davis Martin, who really have more sure profiles against same-handed hitters than they do. Typically, like a good start for them is defined by, getting lefties out, and a bad start's defined by them not getting lefties out. So they're a tough matchup. They're like the White Sox, where I look at it and say, like, they're not going to hit for this much power for forever, are they? Like, they've made some things better. They were getting like, they were not playing up to the capabilities in the first half, and now they're playing well above what we think their capabilities are in power production in the second half. So if it ended at any point, I wouldn't be shocked. But it does seem like a tough matchup, and they obviously have flipped something with their approach offensively that they needed to in a similar way the Sox did. I'm a little like, we're looking at where they're at with the Tigers, kind of in a vacuum, where it feels like the Tigers have played their worst baseball to slide down to this, and the Guardians will play their best to get up to us. To now, it looks like in range if they keep this up. But I feel like both. One, I think the Tigers are kind of like bounce back eventually. I don't think their first half is entirely mirage. And I think the Guardians are both came out of the break playing above their heads a little bit like the Sox, and they have these very concrete reasons for why they're going to run out of steam in terms of losing 2 important pitchers to gambling investigations, which I think is a kind of a body blow. It's only going to hurt more over time than even the immediate impact of losing those dudes over the course of a season, and trying to keep up a comeback effort over the home stretch with a smaller crop of arms in any way is always hard. So I'm going to say no, even though nothing that happens in the AL Central always makes sense. It's
or in the
always
American League, to be honest with you.
Just like some weird ankle biter Midwestern team is able to stay alive like 170% longer than you anticipated, and this would totally match with that. It would also be like an Ouroboros of like two AL Central teams where it doesn't make sense how they're good. One of them undermining the other in a way where we probably picked the Guardians to win the division going into this year, and it made more sense to us than the idea of the Tigers being the best team in baseball. So this would teach us against recency bias in some weird way, but I don't know. I feel like this. I don't think the Tigers are the '05 White Sox in terms of like midsummer swoon.
Yeah.
But the Guardians have a feel of like a team that's closing ground but doesn't quite have enough juice to like really keep it up for another 2 months. This seems like this was their big counterpunch. They didn't add to the deadline. They lost to the deadline to DraftKings mostly. So even if they didn't trade Stephen Kwan and really like hamper themselves for good, I can't imagine they have the juice to really keep this up for another 2 months. But the 2022 team did happen, so you can't ever rule them out.
From a White Sox perspective, and this is me being a little meatball, but this is something I'm paying attention to and what I'm hoping for. So I got my first wish, ball in air, and the White Sox have been accomplishing that. My next wish is, can the White Sox play better baseball against their division rivals? Entering this homestand, and it's been a while since the White Sox have played a division game, but the White Sox are 7-20 against the American League Central. They're 1-6 against Cleveland. They're 2-5 against Detroit and Kansas City. They're 2-4 against the Minnesota Twins. They got a lot of division games starting this homestand and throughout the rest of the season. This is where I want to see real progress being made in terms of wins and losses, James. I need the White Sox to start building up confidence that they can beat these four teams. And I feel like, yeah, Cleveland's playing great baseball and Detroit is not playing great baseball. And that's the next series for the White Sox. But 15 of their next 18 games coming up are against AL Central foes. The three that are not are the Atlanta Braves, and they're all over the place right now. If this is real, if this level of performance the White Sox have been producing post All-Star break is real and should drum up excitement going into 2026, I need to see it over the next 18 games. I don't want to see a swoon, James. This is where, again, being a meatball White Sox fan, I want to see them be at least 9-9 in the next 18 games. I don't think that's too much to ask.
At least 9-9?
9-9, the next 18. Start beating your division rivals. Because if you just lay down and continue to get your ass kicked by them, it's like, all right, well, how is next year going to get any better?
I would just remind that today's loss, Thursday, dropped them back to 31 games under 500.
I know.
9-9 seems more like a stretch goal than a at least sort of goal.
I just want them to play better against the AL Central. Like they should. I think they're a better team than the Twins. They should beat the Twins.
Twins have been playing 500 balls. Like they look liberated, perhaps. Some whispers about how the clubhouse dynamic has changed suddenly for whatever reason. Team. So I don't know if the Twins like I thought. Look, things are better around the team when they win. I love my fellow Southsiders being happy. I kind of thought like the Angels walk off, and certainly the Seattle series, like, be better if they won, but people were talking a little crazy about these 2025 White Sox. People were pressing sim to end as far as the developmental track about what they'll witness. Like, yeah, we saw like our first signs of like life, and kind of thought like, well, can we be fourth place by the end of the year? Or like this, I thought it was a little ambitious to be like, well, if they played this, they played like 10 under balls sort of for the rest of the year, they could avoid 100 losses, and thought that was like ambitious or a stretch goal. And I saw some people talking about like, what do they need to do to get to 70 wins over the course of the year? And I was like, what? Let's hold the phone a little bit. So
okay.
I mean, there's still major portions of the lineup or rotation, or certainly like what they pull out of the bullpen, where it's like, is this part of like the 3-year plan sort of thing? I don't think that they have all that many pieces in place for that just yet. They have a lot more than they had last year when it felt like we were watching, a road to nowhere. I think you certainly see some core pieces of the future every night. I just don't think we have necessarily it that fully realized yet. And I think there's a bit more like, I don't expect them to play above 500 baseball for the entirety of like post All-Star break. I would expect that to be a sub 500 number. And obviously from the way they started, I think it'll be a little disappointing for them to get there. But I think the like post-mortem look at it will be like, well, this team clearly improved in the second half, even if I think the level play would take from to overtake the Twins or get the 65 wins, or play 500 ball against the AL Central for this final 2 months of the season. That I feel is a little too ambitious for them still, because it's going to require like Colson Montgomery's heater never dies, which was great, which would make our polite chat about whether they should extend him more into like a fevered scream by the end of September, but maybe isn't reasonable for expect it to happen all at once a little bit over these final 2 months. I think 7-11 would be at least more the standard I would try to set. Like, but 9-9 I think would be something to be proud of for a team that's been at the bottom of this division, kind of unquestioned for 2.5 years now.
I just don't want them to go in the next 15 division games 3-12.
That's what I don't want. I think that would be disappointing. I think you would have room to complain about that. And also, like, if they're a home run oriented offense now, it's August in right field, and the ball is supposed to fly, and it should play up into their hands. So, are we going to see that? And obviously, that could say a lot about how many games they win.
Yeah. Well, let us know what you guys think. Am I crazy to expect 9-9 in the next 18 games? Let us know what you think in the comment section.
I thought you were trying to avoid paying for steak dinner, not, shoot the moon and like lose it 2 times over somehow.
No, James, I'm already looking at Bivette's reservations in October. Like, I know I'm losing this. The team's averaging 2 home runs a game post All-Star break. Yeah, I'm losing this. I'm losing this bet.
So now you're just trying to shoot the moon in some way.
But that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. We'll recap the action between the White Sox and the Guardians on Sunday night as we bring you a new podcast episode on Monday, previewing that upcoming Detroit Tigers series before the White Sox have a day off on Thursday, August 14th. And they'll head to the road to Kansas City, but the Savannah Bananas will be visiting right field on August 15th and 16th. So it's going to be a very festive time at right field next weekend, even though the White Sox will be in Kansas City. But thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. If you just discovered the Sox Machine Podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You could also listen and watch the show on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Sox Machine. We also have additional videos that we upload to our YouTube channel. You can check those out. Follow us on social media. James will be back at the stadium the next 6 games, so follow him on all the social media platforms at JR Fegan. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. And of course, follow us at Sox Machine. We are on Blue Sky. You can follow us over there at SoxMachine.com. James is at JRFegan.SoxMachine.com. I am Josh.SoxMachine.com. If you enjoy our work and want full access to all of our coverage of the Chicago White Sox and Major League Baseball, sign up to become a Sox Machine subscriber at SoxMachine.com. Monthly plans start at $5, and that gets you the ad-free version of both the podcast and the website and access to our comment section. We also have a couple spots open in our Veterans Committee. We're going to have a sweet night with our VC. I'm very excited about it. So all the VCs that have been supporting us are going to be joining us in a suite as we get to watch the White Sox and the New York Yankees play later in August. If you are interested in joining us or being part of our Veterans Committee, you can sign up at SoxMachine.com. The Sox Machine Podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com. You're on for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside James Fegan, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.
Warning, the following ZipRecruiter radio spot you are about to hear is going to be filled with F-words.
When you're hiring, we at ZipRecruiter know you can feel frustrated, forlorn even, like your efforts are futile, and you can spend a fortune trying to find fabulous people, only to get flooded with candidates who are just fine. Fortunately, ZipRecruiter figured out how to fix all that. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/zip. With ZipRecruiter, you can forget your frustrations because we find the right people for your roles fast, which is our absolute favorite F word. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day.
Fantastic.
So, whether you need to hire 4, 40, or 400 people, get ready to meet first-rate talent. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/zip to try ZipRecruiter for free. Don't forget, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip. Finally, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip.